City Board of School Commissioners. Apologize for the delay in our start. At this point, I'd like to ask for a motion to open the public business meeting. Moved by Commissioner Berkeley, second by Commissioner Chinia. All in favor? Everybody's in favor of opening the meeting. I'd like to ask everybody to please stand and for presentation of colors from the JROTC of Patterson High School. I'd like to thank the students from the JROTC of Patterson High School, Cadet Captain Cameron Fox, Cadet Major Jason Callis, Cadet First Lieutenant Esther Peralta, Cadet Airman First Class Ashlyn Simmons, and Cadet Airman First Class Kai Al-Batania. Can I have a motion to approve the prior open session meeting minutes? Moved by Commissioner Berkeley, second. Please. Second by Commissioner Chinia. All in favor? Joshua? Commissioners Lynn, McFadden, Chinia, Kashani, Frank, Berkeley, Richardson. Motion passes 7-0. Motion to approve prior closed session summaries. Moved by Commissioner Frank. Second by Commissioner Berkeley. All in favor? Approved by Commissioners McFadden, Chinia, Kashani, Frank, Berkeley, Richardson. Motion passes 6-0. Both Commissioners Bondima and Hassan are out of town, so in their absence, I'd like to ask Commissioner Frank to give the summary from the Operations Committee meeting.
Thank you. Commissioner Bondima asked me to cover the following subjects. The committee reviewed or heard the presentation of the feasibility study for the Northwood Elementary School. We were told that there were three options that were considered initially, with a recommendation to proceed with the complete demolition and new construction, 110,000 square foot new school. Secondly, the capital improvement program was presented 2020 through 2025. In the last 3 years, there's been 148 projects completed, and 4 new buildings are proposed in this fiscal year. We point out that we talk about the 21st century schools producing anywhere between 23 and 28 schools, but we shouldn't forget that the CIP itself also produces new schools. We have 4 schools that are in the CIP for this year, so that should always be added to the total of schools that our kids will be benefiting from. And then the final was the 21st century schools progress to date. Let's see, really nothing that has not been presented before to report. So that's the report on operations. Thanks.
Commissioner McFadden, can you report on the policy committee?
Sure. The policy committee met on September 18th, 2018, and we discussed policy ILA, test integrity, in addition to its regulations. In that, we had a lot of discussion about that policy update, but also the need to crosswalk the policy with the changes from No Child Left Behind to ESSA. And we also discussed policy EBCD, delayed openings and emergency closings of schools. And that information is also posted on our website. The next meeting for the policy committee is on October 16th at 3:30, where we will be discussing policy EEA, and that deals with transportation.
Commissioner Berkeley from Teaching and Learning Committee? Muriel?
Sorry, thank you. We have not met since our last meeting, since our last board meeting.
There you have it. Thanks. I'd like to acknowledge a gift of $200 towards the Springboard program at Priority Schools from Priceless Carpet One. Can I have a motion to approve the personnel and the quasi-judicial matters, the appeals and hearings agenda? Motion from Commissioner Frank, second by Commissioner Richardson. All in favor? Commissioners McFadden, Chinia Kashani, Frank, Berkeley, Richardson. Motion passes 6-0. And did I skip over? Don't I usually come before you? I'm in there right now. Okay. So we used to do this when I first joined the board, and then we kind of stopped doing it, and I'm not sure why. But we're now going to do this on a regular basis, and that is to acknowledge the people who are retiring from the Baltimore City school system with 30-plus years of service. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to call the name, read the years of service, and then you can come towards the front, and then we're going to take we have certificates for everybody, and then we're going to take a group photograph with all of the retirees and all of the school board members and the CEO. And this is just, this is just really cool. So you'll see. First is Craig Smith, 31.8 years of service. Oh, yeah, stand and come. You can stand and come forward if you're here. Is Craig here? Oh, that's too bad. Okay. Next is Darrell Bruton, 33.2 years of service. Next, we have Kevin Williams, 38.1 years of service. Oh! Next, we have Shirley West, 38.7 years of service. Marcia Brown, 43 years of service. Teresa Hawley, 43.9 years of service. And last but certainly not least, Cynthia Welchel with 46.9 years of service. So that concludes my comments. I'm going to turn it over to the CEO.
Thank you, Chair Kashani. I just want to verify that there are, in fact, no PEPs this evening? Oh, there is. So I'm going to invite Chief Grant Skinner for tonight's PEP agenda.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Dr. Santelises. We have one appointment. LaShawn Davis, currently Educational Specialist 2, is appointed Special Education Liaison effective September 26th.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you again, Chief Grant Skinner. It's good to see everyone here. As many of you know, student wholeness is a major focus of our Blueprint work here in Baltimore City, and today I was with a panel of young people in D.C. who were very clear that for them, school was, yes, about what occurred in the classroom, but it was also what occurred outside of the classroom that they really felt as being beneficial to who they were, and not only making them better students, but better people. And oftentimes in Baltimore City, we recognize this through our young people's very enthusiastic participation in athletics. And so one of the things that's really great about having a valuable partner in this process, this kind of endeavor to bring wholeness and recognize the wholeness of young people, is that we have a partner that not only focuses on sports as part of their main business, but also what sports says about the potential of human beings and the potential of young people. And so last year, our Under Armour provided their top-of-the-line uniforms and coaches' apparel for nearly every sport to all of our high schools. This year, they are finishing.
It's a big deal.
That's a big deal. This year, they are finishing that cycle with football and basketball, so you know those folks will be big-time styling after that. And since uniforms represent a large expense for our athletics departments, Under Armour's generosity also frees up money for other important areas of need. And I think that as important as that is, and as notable as that is, one of the things that makes partnership with Under Armour so valuable is they have a keen ability, particularly through what I would call one of their most valuable leaders, Stacey Ulrich, who really understands those points that make a big difference for kids immediately, for young people to see their value immediately. And I will tell you, I've only seen a little clip of young people's faces when they receive these uniforms, but it lets you know that for all of the work that we all do every day, when you get to the level of something that young people can tangibly see, it was clear and evident to me in their faces just how much the addition of something like uniforms, and when I say uniforms, not the kind that my mom had to sew, for the basketball team. We're talking state-of-the-art, professional grade uniforms. It really does say a lot. And so I'm really pleased to actually welcome someone who I consider a colleague and a friend, Stacey Ulrich from Under Armour, and Pete D. Candia from the Fund for Educational Excellence, another fabulous partner, who are going to show us a brief video that really exemplifies how much their generosity means to our players and coaches. And so I would love to have Stacey and Pete join us now to share some of their thoughts and reflections, and then we will show you the quite I'm going to age myself if I say fly, but awesome video. Is fly okay still? See, Commissioner McFadden is still in the classroom, so he lets me know when I'm still kind of okay. So I'm going to invite both Stacey and Pete up now. If you guys could come up and just share a bit about your wonderful, right here. You can just press the buttons until there's the green ring at the base. Thank you.
One button. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all, commissioners, for having us. and all the guests here this evening. I was thoroughly impressed by our junior ROTC as well, so thank you for the hospitality. On behalf of our teammates around the globe, and most importantly, the ones here in Baltimore that call Baltimore our hometown, it is an honor and a privilege to be here tonight to share more about this partnership, but more importantly, to be a part of the solution here in Baltimore. And we often say, well, it starts with uniforms. In this very brief video that we'll show here, we'll show you a little bit about that excitement. It really is about the student wholeness and about their full journey, and finding the spark that will continue to ignite what's inside of them in their full performance and identity. And so as we've gone on this journey, we've learned a lot about our students here in this city. And while many of you in this room get to see that firsthand, and it was clear but evident by the years of service, I tried to keep calculating, but have never been that good in math. But I think over all of the those that you announced, it was over 200 plus hours or years of service, which is pretty phenomenal. And people who have dedicated their lives, and to be a small part of that is such an honor. And to have great partners like the school district, the fund, Inside Out, the Ravens, all join us on this journey because we all believe in the power of this city and the power of our young people is such a privilege. And because of this effort and this journey, this last summer we were recognized by ESPN in the Sports Humanitarian Awards. And it was so humbling to be amongst peers around the world and share this story. And so we hope you'll continue on this journey with us. We hope you get excited about this little story, piece of the story, but recognizing that it goes so much deeper than uniforms, and that the work that Pete and the team does every single day is really about the future success of this city and about the full potential that our young people have ahead of them.
On behalf of Under Armour and City Schools, we just want to thank you and show you our gratitude. And one of those things to show our gratitude is to give you the best uniforms that we've ever come out with.
When you look good and you feel good, you really do play good.
Under Armour has been a humongous partner, not just for football for us, but for all of our programs. We often hear about what Baltimore lacks, but we have something to truly celebrate today.
Under Armour is like, it helping the whole city. They feel good, because I grew up here.
The gold and blue is shining. We look beautiful in their uniform and go out and represent Under Armour, Baltimore City, and our schools.
This is, not only just about getting to go on the field and look good, but this is huge for the community. You not only plan for each other in your locker room, but each other in the city. You guys go and be the best that you can be and love your brother.
And there's so many key highlights in that spot, but I hope there was one piece, and Tiffany, who I don't believe was able to make it tonight, but Tiffany Bird, who's an unsung hero.
She sure is.
Is she? Oh, well, I was going to say, even if you weren't in the room, she is an unsung hero within this building, and the comment that she made that so often we talk about what we don't have, but this is the only relationship and partnership like this in North America, and that a brand like ours to adopt the entire school district and all the student athletes. And so I thought that was a really powerful message to send to our students, that we are the first city to be able to say that we have a partnership like this. So thank you again to the commissioners, to the team, Allison, Sonia, your guys' support and leadership, Cheryl, all of the guidance, and of course, Tiffany for carrying the torch, and Pete for always finding new opportunities. We appreciate being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy.
Can I just say something? I just want to say a quick thank you to you guys about what great partners you've been, and how I think, to me, the epitome of a partner is somebody who's really listening to what it is that we need, and you're always really careful to hear from us and what we need, and really trying to meet us where we are and really meet our student wholeness goals. So it's not just this uniform piece, as you said, it's the work with our coaches, it's the work with our athletic directors, it's the work with our schools through the Heart of America work and the rehab work. I mean, you've met us in so many ways. So I'm just really appreciative to have such a thoughtful and engaged partner.
Thank you. And as Allison just mentioned, Under Armour has also partnered to renovate the physical space of 15 schools with new gyms, new spaces, gardens. So they understand wholeness in ways that we only can hope that we have more partners to emulate. So thank you again. Thank you again. A couple of things tonight. I know that, and one of the things I want to point out is we definitely understand, we have heard, and we share the concerns from a number of families, students, and staff whose school buildings have been experiencing problems with mold as a result of the prolonged and wet weather. As I described in the board meeting that we had about 2 weeks ago on August 28th, the hot and humid weather really is causing condensation leaks at some of our air-conditioned buildings, with water from hot air kind of dripping down, forming condensation. We've been removing ceiling tiles, really trying to keep the pipes dry. Our facilities team really has worked incredibly hard to address a number of mold-related issues at least 30 schools, and they are using insulation to really try to prevent further condensation leaks. You should also know that Baltimore City is not alone in this. Everybody from the University of Maryland to some of our colleagues in Anne Arundel Public Schools and others, it just testifies to the fact that while we are absolutely working to address the issue here, we are not alone. This is not a Baltimore City only issue, but the weather everywhere is making things challenging. I want to reassure parents, the larger community, that your health and well-being is still of our primary, it is our top priority. And we really are working, doing everything that we can to rectify the situations and really keep them contained in a timely manner and resolved. Dehumidifiers are being installed to help keep the air dry. Any areas of mold growth have been thoroughly cleaned and treated, and anything that cannot be cleaned, like the ceiling tiles that I referenced earlier, we are having them removed and we are throwing those out. We're disposing of them. We are also, in order to make sure that the air quality is safe and that there's no questions about that, we are doing and performing regular air quality tests to make sure that the conditions remain safe. We know that there were some questions about that from families and staff. And we're going to continue to do that testing, to take these steps until all of the mold is removed in any building where mold is reported. To address the concerns of parents and staff and serve as an extra precautionary measure, some school administrators have proactively, and I would say correctly, moved students to different areas of school buildings while mold is cleaned and removed in affected classrooms. This is definitely the case at Callaway Elementary School. I see the principal is here this evening. We continue to work again to keep our school communities informed about this issue. If you have concerns with your school in particular, please reach out to your principal, who will also be in direct contact with our operations department that is currently under the leadership of Dr. Lynette Washington. We're reminding parents to make sure that you have current phone numbers on file at your child's school, please, so that we can make sure that you receive timely updates in the coming days. So again, I just want to let everyone know we are working through, we're committed to the communication. Please reach out if you have any particular concerns, first to your your school's principal, but also within our operations department. We are working alongside our colleagues both in higher education and across the state to address this issue. Okay. Last Monday, I had the pleasure of attending the first Baltimore City Back to School Night at the Maryland Science Center. I will tell you that I could take the whole meeting just speaking about the power of that night. It is one of those things that when you initially have a conversation with a team of folks and you say, I'm thinking like maybe we could do something along these lines. And I had the real pleasure and awe of being able to walk in and take a 20-second conversation that people, a full team of people and partners brought to life in what resulted in the middle of onslaught of downpours. So this did not occur on a sunny, balmy September night when everybody was outside. It was downpours of rain. I walked into the Maryland Science Center and said, well, with all the rain, if we get a couple hundred people, we'll be doing well. We got over 2,000 families, Baltimore City families, who came out, and they came out because we had a team of people here in our Family and Community Engagement Office who really harnessed the power of our community partners. They harnessed the generosity of the Maryland Science Center. I couldn't take enough pictures and video of families working together. It was wonderful seeing young kids learn about kinetic energy and dinosaur fossils. We even got to see a lot of our young people in our career technical program. I thought I was on one of those kind of Oprah-sponsored cook-offs when I went upstairs on the 4th floor and our own Mervo students were mic'd up and doing demonstrations. I thought they were going to whip out their own cookbook at the end. But it really is just a testament to the hard work. I want to thank them. And just to give everybody, if you weren't able to attend, a little taste of what, like I said, over 2,000 of our families here in Baltimore City got to experience due to the really hard and excellent work of the Family and Community Engagement team and all of our partners. Here you go.
Hey, this is Imani at the Maryland Science Center for a citywide Back to School Night. This is going to be an incredible event that'll bring together students and families for a night they won't soon forget. Night has been off the hook. We've had music, we've had games, we've had cooking and yoga and movies and Play-Doh, okay? It's been a great night.
I did robots and it was fun with them because I want to create robots when I get older.
It was a lot of fun walking around with my boys and learning about different things.
Events like tonight are so important because we're really bringing city schools into our communities. Resources and tips around information to support learning at home.
I saw families from so many different neighborhoods and schools all enjoying time together and really showing learning can be fun.
Over here, we have 3D printed glow-in-the-dark squirrels.
We're doing 3D printing things with the 3D printer pen. I learned that you can draw things with just plastic.
So behind us, we have something called silent yoga that gives students a moment to relax and be at peace.
Just giving them a few exercises they could do in the morning just to warm up, get themselves together, wake the body up, and going over why breathing is important for calming down the body and the mind, because if you don't have a still mind, it's hard to have a still body and focus in school.
From Mervo, culinary students are showing us how to make a chicken crepe.
The chicken will be hot, so when I put the chicken in the crepe, the cheese will melt on top of it.
So right now inside the theater, students are giving performances. Let's go check them out.
I don't care how you flex on, you can't do it like me. I don't care how you move on, hard work, you hurting. I leave call like a surgeon. Check this out.
what I see with my eyes is what I see all the time.
This kind of event brings people together where folks are energized for the school year. And really, it's a community collaboration. Like the Maryland Science Center just oozes learning and fun, and that's what we want people to take away.
Wow, what a night. Seeing families engage with city schools through a ton of activities that focus on student wholeness, literacy, and leadership. This has been Imani Humphreys-Torres with the Baltimore City Schools Student Media Team. See you next time. Hey.
Great. So I would like to call on members of the engagement team to stand and be recognized for a job definitely well done. Interim Executive Director Sabrina Sutton. Go ahead and wave your hand, Sabrina. Jessica Lawrence. Edwin Vasquez Lopez. Shayna McIver. Monique Sims. Demetria Singleton. Rashad Staten. Tenny Thrower. And Stephanie Rich. Oh, two more? Go ahead, Chief Perkins Goen.
Also, I see Joel Bratton back there.
I do see Joel. Oh, there he is. There's Mark, too.
And Christina Coleman.
Yeah, this is Mark Laveau, I think, is here. There you go. Is Jonelle here?
Donnell.
Donnell. Sorry, Donnell. Okay, this is the problem.
Did we forget anybody?
Is that everybody? So this is the problem when you don't just look at people's faces, you read the list. If I had looked at people's faces, I would call Joe. But I just want to thank you all for doing that. It definitely, for me, I couldn't think of a better way to start the school year. And just FYI for everybody, they also arranged for there to be bus transportation. So literally, we had families from all over the city who could board buses at their home school and come to the Maryland Science Center. So, great. All right, and with that, those are the end of my comments for I'm sorry, one last thing. I did want to draw everybody's attention to a report that was released today called The Opportunity Myth from TNTP. I still call them the New Teacher Project, but from TNTP. I had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. earlier this morning for the release of the report, and want to just encourage not only all educators, school leaders will be going over some of the key findings of the report, but also families, because what makes this report distinctive to me is not so much all of what it says, because a lot of it will resonate with what we know needs to happen for young people, but it really is the centrality of student voice that is part of the report. And I had the opportunity today to meet with some amazing young people who reminded me of our own amazing students here in Baltimore City. So I just we'll be sharing more about the report, but I wanted to encourage families, teachers, school leaders. It's definitely worth going and downloading this, I think, really important point about what are the resources that need to be brought to bear for all of our young people to have high-quality learning. And with that ends my comments for this evening.
Thanks, Dr. Santelises. What I'd like to do now is for the board, I'm going to walk through the individual items on the consent agenda. If there's something you want to pull, please say which item and what your question is so that we can have the staff be prepared later in the meeting. After public comment, I'm going to ask again if, as a result of something the public has commented on, you want to pull anything else, and so you have another chance. We actually have no procurement items tonight, so there are only 5 items on the consent agenda. One is item 8.01, the FY18 fourth quarter budget amendment request. Commissioner Frank?
I'm not sure that this was presented in a committee, so I think it's an opportunity for the public to see the presentation.
Great, so we'll pull item 8.01. Item 8.02, FY 2019 supplemental appropriation, the general fund MSA fiscal 19 revenue reconciliation. Item 8.03, fiscal year 2020 to 2025 capital improvement program, which was discussed in great detail at the Operations Committee. Item 8.04, policy JICK, bullying, harassment, or intimidation of students, second reader. Item 8.05, feasibility study, Northwood Elementary School, which was also discussed at the Operations Committee. Okay, so as of now, we'll pull one item, but we'll return to this after public comment. So with that, I'd like to start public comment with the specially recognized groups. Thank you. We have a number of our friends here tonight, so we'll start with Sheila Billups, the chair of CCAC, Special Education Citizen Advisory Committee. Glad to see you, Sheila.
We start off a good year this year. CCAC has been 5 back-to-school nights. We started with the Science Center. Got it? I'm sorry. Good evening, everyone that's in attendance. I'm sorry you didn't hear me. We've been to 5 back-to-school nights. Lewis T. Murray, George W.F. McMakin, Claremont, William S. Spear, and we also went to the city back-to-school night, which was a tremendous experience. People of all cultures and backgrounds were there. I think the parents had more fun than the children. It was really an explosive, energetic night. CCAT meets every second Monday of the month, as I always tell you. And CCAT stands for Special Education Citizen Advisory Committee. We're having a powerhouse of Parent Empowerment Conference. It's coming up on October the 4th. It'll be held here from 8:30 to 2. We're going to discuss the navigation of special ed in Baltimore City. I'm talking about IEPs, the process, and how you put everything together. On the 8th, we're having our, like I said, the second Monday meeting. Our very own Dr. Santalise will be there with an overview and just to discuss where she sees special ed going at this year. We'll have transportation. Mr. John Land will become talking about the policies. And also Ms. Michelle Grant Thornton, who's responsible to Partners for Success here in Baltimore City, is a family support group. We are going to be creating IEP binders for the parents that come. All the materials are free. Just bring your child's IEP and we'll help you collaborate and put it together so you'll have a document that is very successful when you go into an IEP meeting. That's all for tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila. Next is our friend from the Teachers Union, John Casey.
Always nice to be considered a friend.
It's actually true.
It
That's
is
how
true.
we think of you.
I always enjoyed my time working with you, Commissioner, on the Charter School Advisory Board. Good evening, Chair Cassiani, Commissioners, Dr. Santalise, my friend Allison. I'm John Casey, a field representative with the Baltimore Teachers Union, and I'm going to be speaking about the concerns at Callaway with the mold. I'm not here to bash anybody or blame anybody, but I want to talk about some of the things that the teachers have to deal with as a result of the mold issue at the school. Been going on, facilities is aware of this, and they've been very responsive to our concerns and issues. Dr. Washington has returned every single email we've sent, updated us on the information that she's gotten. So we've been in constant contact with facilities during this whole process. And I want to commend Dr. Washington for being as responsive, not only her, but her staff, to concerns that we have. This past week, the whole bottom level was partitioned off at Callaway. there were about 9 or 10 classrooms affected. Teachers couldn't get in to get their materials. They couldn't get their belongings that they needed because of it being partitioned off. So when they went in Monday morning, they were making the best of a very trying situation. There were teachers teaching in the auditorium stage. They were put in small classrooms with 2 or 3 classes functioning in the same room. So it was a very trying situation, and the teachers at Callaway have done a yeoman's job. The principal, Mr. Del Toro, has been supplying every resource he has to make this better. Nancy Gant, the executive director, has been also supplying as much support as she can, and it's been very helpful. But what's going to be a concern is once they get the mold situation cleared up, some of these teachers' belongings and stuff that they've gathered over years and years of teaching may not be salvageable, meaning that it may have been sprayed, it may have been infected with mold. The whole bottom floor, everything down there may have to be discarded. So we're asking that the system be aware of this and provide new carpeting, because the bottom floor in most schools are with pre-K, kindergarten, and first graders. So they do a lot of stuff with hands-on. They do a lot of stuff on sitting on carpets, going to stations, and so forth. A lot of that stuff may not be usable because of the process that facilities is using to correct the problem. Teachers are concerned about that. Books, everything may have to actually be discarded once the problem is taken care of and corrected. We want to know if it's actually possible while this is going on, if some of the people can be relocated. I don't know the time frame of when this problem at Callaway. I'm only speaking of Callaway because I cover about 35 schools, and that's the only school that has come to me with the mold issue. If it's possible to consider relocating some of these people because of their trouble being in the classroom with other classes on the stage and so forth. You know, some teachers at Callaway are going to come up and speak. They were recognized about 3 weeks ago in the Baltimore Sun for their significant increase in math scores and test scores. So you have some outstanding teachers and PSRP members from Callaway in the crowd today who are just going over and above what they to meet the needs of the children in the school. So these aren't people who are complainers. They are there doing the job, but their job, because of the unfortunate mold situation, has made it very, very difficult. So I know Dr. Santalese gave an overview of correcting the mold situation, but I think that inside the schools, what the teachers and what the staff and what the administration is doing is great, but sometimes it's just not conducive to learning when Callaway is a fairly small building, when they're stuffed in little nooks and crannies throughout the school. So I would like you to consider that if this is going to be a long period of time, to possibly relocating to a place that is more conducive for the young children. So.
Questions for John? And it sounds like you're in good contact with Lynette.
Yes, she's been very, very supportive. The principal has been very supportive. Nancy Gant has been very supportive. So I'm not here to bash anybody.
No.
I'm not
I just
here
want to make
to-
sure you, in terms
Yeah.
of even considering that, I mean, it would be Dr. Washington who would.
Yeah, but I'm saying, if it's possible, when people talk about mold, you kind of get almost like an itchy feeling on your body right now, thinking about it.
Yeah, just
So-
having you sit here talking to us about it, yes, you're
Yeah,
right.
so it's something that can be transported. It's not, it's something that just goes away. So while this is happening, that could possibly be a consideration. I think you're going to hear a little bit more from Mr. Del Toro when he comes up.
Okay.
But thank you for your time.
And thank you, John, for your, I think, really just communicating some real specific concerns and considerations. So I will say first, with regard to the replacement of materials, we'll definitely be working with teachers to kind of basically catalog or document what they believe was lost, what is no longer usable, and we will definitely be reaching out to help replace some of that. So that's first and foremost. I don't know if you've got your favorite class set of X book. I don't know if we'll get down to that level, but I do want to reassure teachers, Principal Del Toro, that I have visited. I've had the privilege of visiting, particularly the early learning classes at Callaway, and know how hard all of the teachers work, but how critical those supplies are to the school. So that's number one. We'll definitely be addressing that. I know ILED Nancy Gant is more than, I will say, a force when it comes to, and a positive one. I don't want that being misconstrued, Nancy, but as a positive force, we'll make sure that we know on the ground with Principal Del Toro what the gaps are. With regards to replacement, what I would say is we should also have a similar communication loop as operations. Dr. Washington and her team get a sense of where we are in the timeline of resolution, and we could work with Principal Del Toro to see where we are in terms of timeline, in terms of resolution. I think your request was that we would consider that, and I think that we can, but a lot of it will match up with some of the details around timeline, where we are, what alternatives there might be that don't make sense for me to speak to, given other folks have the detail, but I will say that we are certainly open to that, given just how well the full team has been working around this. So I want to thank you for kind of your pinpointing some key issues and concerns from staff.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Our next guest is our friend from PCAB, Joseph Kane. It looks like it's not Joseph Kane.
How dare you? You're correct. I'm not Joseph Kane. I'm Carolyn Combs. I'm the secretary for PCAB.
Thanks, Carolyn.
You ought to pardon us. We're doing alternating turns to make sure that every voice is represented. So you will hear from Joseph shortly, probably the very next board meeting. As I know, Julianne and Shantae and Jamal have discussed in the past, we recently had our retreat on September 15th. We were lucky enough to get Allison Perkins-Cohen and her team to speak with us and to work in some breakout groups on the investing in our future Kerwin document. So we hope that the information we provided was useful and informative to offer our opinion. We have reworked our mission statement, our vision statement, that the board will get getting greater detail with a formal document from our chair, Julianne Kelly. But one thing we have done is we're working on increasing our social media footprint. So we created our PCAB hashtag, which is Equity Everywhere. And that leads to some of the driving points on what our three main goals are. Our first goal that we have for this year is we want to address our interaction with Policy BGA and when we have access to policy information and how we can how can we get our foot in the door when that's being first developed. I know that's already been discussed at the policy meeting. How successful we are with that will lead us to our second goal is trying to determine how we can better drive what policy is our priority, and maybe having a voice in that and implementation of a matrix to help prioritize that. Especially when it comes to seeing some policies that are being reviewed over the summertime when we're not operating and schools aren't operating. And our third goal, which is very important to us, is increasing our interaction with PTOs, PTAs, SFCs, so that we'll get more attendance at our public meetings, because we know that to get the community involved, we really have to get them there and not just the people who only know about it and come to our public meetings. Speaking of public meetings, we have one this Thursday. It is at 6. We'll be discussing the heroin and opioid education policy and the Ingenuity Project. We met with them in our private board meeting and was able to provide some feedback to hopefully have them prepared for the masses this week. And that is what I have for today.
Thank you. Questions? Allison?
I was just going to
Comment?
say to thank you for including us in the retreat, and I just wanted to talk about how the group that we have at PCAP is really, I mean, to a person, this really engaged group of people who are really thoughtful, really care very deeply about our schools, are very smart. I mean, the feedback we got, they're so thoughtful about every aspect of our students' education. So it was really an incredible opportunity for us to be able to have such a great, engaged and informed group of people to engage with around that. So we're fortunate. So just want to
thank you.
And I know I said this last time when your colleagues were here, but the goal you have about connecting with the PTAs and PTOs, I just can't tell you how important that is for us, because there's sort of limited. This isn't the only way we interact with people is at these formal meetings, but it is nice to know that you're setting up this sort of web of contacts so that everybody's voice can be officially represented through you. I really just think that's terrific.
Thank you very much.
So that concludes our comments from our specially recognized groups. I want to turn now to the general public comment. And our first guest is Pamela Johnson from Callaway. Do you have other people that are going to come up with you? Yes, feel free. Oh, yes, okay.
Good evening, Dr. Sandalises and the Board of School Commissioners. My name is Pamela Johnson. I am the Community Schools Coordinator at Callaway Elementary School. We are here tonight on behalf of the many parents, staff, students, partners, and community members from our school who are present tonight. We would like to alert you, but we also know that you are aware of our concerns that have seriously impacted our school. It has disrupted learning and a sense of well-being for our children and our families. Beginning this summer, the school building has had mold in numerous classrooms, and remediation efforts began but failed to stop the spread of the mold. Ongoing circumstances that contributed to the growth of the mold and which has not been addressed include broken air vents that need to be repaired. In addition to the humidity and condensation in the building, we have many units that were not working, and as a result of units not working, it is adding to the humidity in our building. Because of this, we have the whole first floor that has been relocated. We have 3 pre-K classrooms, 2 kindergarten classrooms, 2 first grade classrooms, and 2 citywide special education programs, including our gym, and 4 other staff members were forced to move to the top floor. This puts our students, school staff, and parents at risk for health concerns and severely overcrowds the learning space on the one usable floor of the school. The Health and Safety Department and Engineering Department have been to our school to begin to address compound issues, as already mentioned, broken air systems, extreme humidity, which causes the condensation and leaks in the building. In our initial outreach, the concerned Callaway community requested immediate mold remediation in all classrooms, new or repaired air vents or air units. We requested that all ceiling tile with black mold be replaced, and a timely manner and clear communication about the mediation efforts in our school and mitigation efforts for our school leadership. After numerous calls and meetings with our principal and other departments from the district office, we finally understand that some of our requests are being addressed. We are here this evening to relay our story and to encourage a revision of the protocol of these types of adverse problems. With the aging infrastructure in Baltimore City, we know that this issue could impact so many of our schools at any time. In particular, we would like to report that parents who called the district office were not able to identify key personnel to speak with and were redirected from department to department, resulting in alarming concern for who would take ownership of the response effort. The time that it took to generate an adequate response is cause for concern. When issues were raised, they were addressed properly. When issues are raised, they should be addressed properly and immediately without necessitating parent communication with outside agencies. To that end, we encourage you look into the protocol and communication strategy for the opening and closing of schools when health-related concerns are involved. Additionally, on behalf of our school, we make the following requests to help us recover: a public action plan and timeline for all necessary repairs, weekly air quality testing and clear reporting from a professional agency, the purchase of on-site dehumidifiers, a maintenance plan so that we can ensure that all repairs will be preserved, compensation for all materials that were destroyed, and support for the teachers who need to clean and restore their classrooms. Please be reminded that our students have had the biggest increase in PARCC scores in the district in literacy, and our math scores also improved significantly. The loss of instructional time due to this issue is unacceptable to us. Some of our students are afflicted by health issues like asthma and allergies to mold. Unfortunately, concerned parents had to prioritize the health of their children over school attendance during this difficult time. Our enrollment in attendance has suffered. For our children to prosper and continue to improve academically, it is vital that they have a safe and healthy environment and do not lose a moment of instructional time. According to the Baltimore City Schools website, every day, students walk through the doors of Baltimore schools filled with talent, dreams, and enormous potential. Our responsibility is to provide a world-class education that will empower them to hone their gifts and develop the skills they need to pursue the future that calls them. Our children cannot be empowered or develop their skills at Callaway or any other Baltimore City school in the midst of unhealthy and unsafe conditions. We encourage you to consider our story, concerns, and questions for the sake of our students that we serve in Baltimore Public Schools. Please examine the protocols that you use to deal with these matters so that we can all stand in unified support of the well-being of our children. As a final note, we would like to publicly thank the teachers and the staff at Callaway who have continued to welcome our children and persevere in the face of these challenging circumstances. Respectfully submitted, the Parent Action Committee of Callaway Elementary School.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for your thoughtful comment and reasonable suggestions. And I wanted to ask, I think we've got maybe a couple questions. So, Commissioner Lynn?
Yes. I wanted to touch on one thing that you said. Do you know how many vents were broken and how long have they been broken for?
My last count, I did a walkthrough with some of the engineers and the people from the Health and Safety Committee. And if I recall, there may be about 15 units that need, I'll say 13 to 15 units that need some type of repair, such as drip pans. I think there's some that need a new motor. I do believe since this has started, we have received 2 new or restored, refurbished univents in a few classrooms, but it was quite a bit.
So you said 2 out of the 13 in whole?
Yes.
When was the first time you submitted the request, or have they come out to talk about the units?
Well, I've been a community school coordinator at Callaway for 7 years. So the problem is not a new problem as far as the Univents. I can say directly this summer, we were working with the engineers. They've been in our building. Sometimes it's a part that they don't have. Sometimes we're just waiting for somebody to come back and complete whatever was started. But I think the information has gone out numerous times. I'm quite sure there's some emails or something, a string of communication in reference to the Univents or pans. I believe the last I heard that there were some drip pans that need to be purchased. So I'm not sure how long that would take. But it has been an ongoing problem. And I think in addition to the wet, the rain, the condensation, the humidity is just adding to the problem.
Questions, comments?
Thank you.
Our next guest is Elise Preston.
Good evening, Board of Commissioners and Dr. Santelises. My name is Elise Preston, and I am the Associate Director with Maryland Out of School Time Network. Our organization also serves as the sponsor for the Maryland Coalition for Community Schools. And this evening, I'm here to speak on behalf of the coalition and show our support for the community school strategy and express some of the concerns that we have with the recommendations made to the Kirwan Commission by Dr. Santelises. Primarily, the recommendations to eliminate categorical funding for community school coordinators and to not require individual schools to complete needs assessments using community-based partners within geographical proximity to our schools. Baltimore City adopted a community schools policy in October of 2016, and we firmly believe that we should be working to expand and improve upon the growth and successes that we're seeing, rather than rolling back the progressive policies that we already have in place and reducing the ability of community-based organizations to serve as school partners. Community schools present a powerful return on investment. A cost-benefit analysis conducted by Communities in Schools found that every dollar spent returns $11.60 of social value to students. And lead agencies are able to leverage dollars and resources in a specific and unique way that schools do not have the capacity to do on their own. In addition to social and emotional value, there's also demonstrable academic impact. Community schools are positively overrepresented in the top PARCC score improvement schools this year, with 5 of the top 10 most improved schools in math and reading scores being community schools. Though we deeply believe in a coordinated community school strategy, we also agree that community schools are not a panacea. They're not able to solve every single issue that our schools and our students face, but we have seen enormous value and remarkable gains that come from a well-coordinated community school strategy and the ability to have community school coordinators serve as gatekeepers to our schools. We are in support of a systems-level approach to the community school strategy that involves district-level support and leadership, but also coordinates resources with community partners and supporting the design and implementation of community schools. We want to be collaborators in supporting the current recommendations that we all want to see, and we don't want to be at odds. Baltimore City community school leaders are fiercely dedicated, are highly impactful, and are strong education advocates. And it would be a detriment to students and the school district to diminish the impact that lead agencies have and stifle their ability to be fully integrated partners in our future community school vision. Our core ask is that community schools stay true and aligned to the existing community school policy so that we can continue to expand and improve upon this community school model instead of regressing and holding tight to policies that do not allow community input and that exclude valuable community partners.
Thank you, Ms. Preston. Any comments? I just want to say, and I know we're going to hear from 3 other people about community schools, but just at the outset, just want to say there's been no change at all in the terms of the board and staff's level of commitment to the community schools policy. I think we're just going to all need to continue to work through and maybe clarify some of how we talk about the Kirwan recommendations. But I think for us, we believe firmly that as it relates to Kirwan, that how the state ends up funding schools with high degrees of concentrated poverty is of the utmost importance, and we see community schools as one of many strategies that we need to have funding for. So there's been no change at all in the level of support from this board on the community schools policy. So we're going to have a presentation later in the meeting, actually not too far from now, and I know I have some questions, and hopefully we can continue a robust conversation. I'm glad you're here tonight. I'm glad that people are raising these questions so we can all keep ourselves honest and make sure we're all working off the same page. But I think we're good, and if we hear that you're concerned, then we can't just say, well, there's no reason to be concerned. If you're feeling it, there's some truth to it. So let's just keep working together. But speaking from the board, there is no change at all to the level of our commitment to the community school strategy. None.
Great. Well, we'd love to continue the conversation and continue to stay engaged.
Absolutely. So thank you. Our next guest tonight to speak on the community schools is Keisha Goodwin.
Good evening, Commissioners and Dr. Santelises. I am Keisha Goodwin, and I'm representing FIA, Frankfurt Improvement Association. I'm the educational chair, and I'm also representing myself as a parent. With the budget cuts due to the FSF formula and how you measure poverty, dropping 30% or more of students, and decreasing funds from $800 for low achievement to $400 for poverty and $200 for concentrated poverty, no wonder most schools have a struggle with becoming a community school because they cannot afford a community coordinator, which costs us almost $100,000. With barriers like this, we are preventing great programs from starting and from continuing in our public schools. Moving on to assessments. I received a document of SY 18-19 assessment calendar, and I wanted to bring our attention to kindergartens in particular. The kindergartens is tested 101 for KRA, ELA, DIBELS, and the gifted and talented. And they are also individually monitored for SKBs. 2.2% of a school year is mandated for testing from the More Learning, Less Testing Act. So multiplied 0.022 times 7.8083 times 180. That's the amount of time times the hours in a school day times 180 days. And I came up with 28 hours of testing. Let's just say a teacher have 30 students each, and each student take 20 minutes to test. So that's 30 times 20, which is 600. Divide that by 60. 60 minutes being an hour. We are already at 10 hours just for one test. So I count how many tests we have on this calendar for kindergartners. Just for ELA and reading alone, we have 8 tests. September 4th, September 7th, September 10th, January 9th, January 14th, January 29th, April the 5th or March 25th, May 7th, May 13th, May 20th. And so I named all of those because we have the 8 reading and language arts along with the math intro. The reading and language arts alone is 8 different tests. So 8 times 10 hours, that's 80 hours. We're well over the 2.2 for testing in kindergarten alone. It is a shame. In order for schools to complete testing, they have to purchase their own computer lab. their own computer tables, stands. If the district is requiring testing, the district should be also providing those computer cards. A school should not have to take thousands of dollars to pay for a computer card that the district should be providing. And let's also remember that Park does not start on June 5th. Park starts after spring break because we have schools with 3 and 4, third graders, fourth graders, fifth grade classes. And so it starts after spring break. However, on this calendar, it says June 5th.
As always, thanks for keeping us focused on this issue. No, seriously, thank you. Questions for Keisha? Okay, thanks, Keisha.
You're welcome.
Our next guest is Ahmed Khalik. Ahmed, did I say your name right?
Good evening, Dr. Sansalisis and members of the board. My name is Ahmad Khalik. I am a Baltimore City Public School student parent, and I'm also the Community Child First Authority Community School Coordinator at City Springs Elementary Middle. Last year was my first year working in the school environment and as a community school coordinator, and it was filled with moments of success, moments of joy, but also moments of failure and moments of sadness, like most of us that works in the school community. Attendance was my biggest challenge. Attendance was a priority from the first day I met with our principal, Dr. Rhonda Paquetta, because it is a key outcome for the community school strategy that we work on very hard. The Child First Authority provided me with an attendance intervention database to track every phone call, home visit, letter, interaction with families regarding attendance. As coordinator, I worked to connect families with the support they needed every day to get their students to school. Despite this, our chronic absenteeism still raised. Our chronic absenteeism for last school year was 24%. It was 22% the year prior. That was unacceptable for everyone in the building. We knew we had to do something different, so we dedicated our summer to figuring out the why to chronic absenteeism for our students. We knew who, we knew when, but the why was the missing piece, and we felt that that was our missing key. Over the summer, we investigated 270 students with 15 or more absences, and we went to work. First, we spoke to staff and teachers about the names on the list and what information they might have had about these students and the days that they missed. Second, we contacted parents to get a visceral understanding of the barriers that lead to chronic absenteeism. Lastly, we changed how we support barrier removal at the school level and communicated that out to our parents. Here's some of the changes we put in place to approach chronic absenteeism differently. We've created a school-specific resource guide based on the barriers identified from the data from the project and sent that out to every family before the first day of school. We strengthened our internal resource guide with more Southeast-specific partners that can help with the barriers that we identified throughout this project. We partnered with Morgan State University's School of Social Work for 2 intern placements this year to work with previously chronic absentee students and at-risk chronically absentee students as well as success mentors throughout the school year. We've begun a new initiative called Walkout Wednesdays that I'm very proud of, where we've included 30 minutes in our agenda during professional development days for educators and staff to get out and do home visits throughout that day together as a school community. We partner with 4 other schools in the southeast area of the city to begin the creation of a multi-neighborhood collaborative campaign around attendance that will incorporate support from local businesses in the area to provide rewards to students and families for improved attendance. None of this would have been possible without the community school strategy that leveraged the support of Johns Hopkins University Center of Social Concerns Community Impact Internship Program, Child First Authority supplying the database, the human power, the brain power to navigate these difficult situations. Also, our principal, Dr. Rhonda Paquetta, for having the vision, the thoughtfulness to see the project through for the betterment of all our students that we serve. Her leadership was a driving force behind this project because she understands the power of education and wants to see every City Springs student in school every day because we can't teach them if they're not here. Thank you.
Thought it was on. My bad. Okay, now it's okay, yeah. I liked it all, but I think the multi-neighborhood attendance strategy is really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the more schools can join forces geographically, I think, around certainly something that important, but it can be done around a lot of things, but I think it's really cool, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Comments, questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next guest and an old friend, Chris Ryer. I'm not sure, Chris, what's that say about you?
Not either. I guess.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I don't want to belabor the point. This was sort of a last-minute thing on my part around the community school initiative. And Cheryl, I think you addressed some of my concerns. I just want to emphasize one point. I understand why, this is regarding the Kirwan Commission, why you believe that community schools aren't the only answer to concentrated poverty, albeit maybe one of the better ones. I also understand why you would not want to be required to fund the community school position. My concern is an idea I've heard about bringing the community school coordinators in-house as Baltimore City School System employees, and that would concern me. I think this example we just had of a community school coordinator organizing to bring a presentation to the board is a perfect example of why that would not be a good idea. But more importantly, there are resources that that the nonprofit sector can access that a government agency cannot. And I would commend Dr. Santelisa's leadership in this Community School Steering Committee. And I would hope that that would result in the development of a group of providers for maybe more distressed communities, more disinvested communities, high poverty communities, that we can all work together to increase non-school system resources for those areas. I believe the community development field is interested in the exact same objective. And I believe that would be a better approach than trying to bring community school coordinators in as school system employees. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, as the Kirwan Commission process winds down, the basic reality is that we have to all join arms, every single person, because we're under-resourced, why we need more and better air conditioning and vents at Callaway. We need more community schools coordinators. We need more teachers. I mean, we're under-resourced. And so the important thing, I think, is, and we have a high poverty district, and that we're going to need to be joined at the hip, like over the next, I was at a presentation today, and we're 197 days away, I'm told this afternoon, from the end of the legislative session. There's a prevailing wisdom that if we don't get it done this year, then it'll be too easy to pass the buck and pick it off a little bit for this, a little bit for that in future sessions. So that's why I think it's going to be important for us to hang together. And I'm looking at Kalila, and I think we're going to be together on this, because we know we don't need a nickel, we need a dollar. If we end up with only a nickel because they get all romantic about community schools, that will have been a failure for us all as a team. We need to get the whole dollar, and then we need to allocate the right amount of money to make sure we have community schools, because we need them. We need a lot of stuff. So let's just keep our eyes on the prize here and stick together, because like I said, the Senator Ferguson and Delegate McIntosh said today at a luncheon, we have 197 days, and if we don't get it done, and if we take our foot off the gas, that if we wait till next session and we let them divide us and say, we'll give you a little bit for this and a little bit for that, but not a lot for the other, then we'll still be here 15 years later looking at the next formula revision, wondering why our kids are still not succeeding, because we let them get away with the first time, not giving us enough resources. So I'm glad you guys were here tonight. Let's keep the family together. And we're not backing away from this strategy. And anybody that thinks that's wrong.
Great. I think we have a strong team in the 46th district now, and a newly strong team in the 45th district. So I think we're good for that.
They're getting themselves organized around this too. It's great. So that concludes our public comment for the night. I want to ask the board if, as a result of public comment, if there's any other items that you want to pull from the consent. So with that, I want to vote on everything but item 8.01, then we'll have a presentation on 8.01. So can I have a motion to approve consent items 8.02, 8.03, 8.04, and 8.05? Motion by Commissioner Richardson. Do I have a second? A second by Commissioner Berkeley. All in favor? Commissioners McFadden, Chinia, Kashani, Frank, Berkeley, Richardson. Motion passes 5-6-0, sorry. Motion passes. And now, Commissioner Frank had some questions on item 8.01. And this, I saw John and Marianne. Great, thanks. Commissioner Frank?
My comment was that sitting in the Operations Committee, I don't recall this being presented at an earlier committee meeting, so for the benefit of the public, I just asked that it be presented. If you could just present what was in the packets for the
Sure.
consent. Thanks.
No problem. This is the fourth quarter year-end budget amendment request for city schools.
Uh-oh.
Oh. Is it on? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, now it's working.
Something's happened.
I think they were just going to do it for me. Oh, they're going to do it for me?
Oh, okay. All right.
Excuse me. We put through budget amendments at various times during the year, and budget amendments are usually a request to transfer budget dollars between either our state reporting categories or our objects of expenditure, and generally these transfers are made within the same department or office. The report that we have here covers the activity through June 30th of 2018. The first part is there was a supplemental appropriation decrease for MSA operating expenditures. That's the difference between what we actually spent for our MSA reimbursables and what we had budgeted from our to receive in revenue from the state. And that's $24,000. For our major category amendments, since this was the fourth quarter of the year and it's our year end, we did a lot of category rebalancing to move expenditures into the right categories at the end of the year for state reporting purposes as part of doing our financial statements. So we increased mid-level administration by $8 million. Instruction decreased by about $15.2 million. That's mostly allocated to vacancies and the fringe benefits that are associated with vacancies in the schools. Transportation was an increase of $3.7 million, and operation of plant was an increase of $3.5 million. We put additional resources were needed for repair and maintenance, so we increased maintenance of plant by $1.3 million, and we decreased benefits where we had a little bit of an excess by $1.3 million. This next slide shows you the category amendments in summary by state category. And this slide shows the same ones by our object of expenditure, between salaries and wages and fringe benefits and so forth and so on. So this gives the summary of the amendments for the quarter. These are the object amendments that we made. Salaries and wages decreased by $15 million. Contractual services increased by $15 million. Additional resources were needed for curriculum and utility costs, so we decreased fringe benefits by $3 million. Supplies and materials increased by $2 million, and other charges increased by $1 million. Again, this is by object. And this just shows you the summary of the changes that were made.
The school and the central office.
And that's it. And are there any questions?
Great. It was more about transparency than anything else.
That's no problem. And to be honest with you, I didn't know the answer to the questions. This is the seventh one I've done, so I think we'll fix that.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to approve item 8.01, the fourth quarter budget amendment request. Moved by Commissioner Berkeley, second. Commissioner Frank, all in favor? Commissioners McFadden, Chinia, Kashani, Frank, Berkeley, Richardson. Motion passes 6-0. Thanks, John. Our final item tonight, just a little shocking, is the community school strategy update.
Good evening, everyone. Sabrina Sutton, Interim ED, Office of Engagement.
Good evening, Kalila Slater Harrington from the Family League. Welcome to Community School Night at the board meeting tonight. So what you're going to see before you are a lot of text and in part some education for our new board members around the community school strategy. I will not read all of this to you, but the community school strategy is an equity strategy, right, to make sure that those who need more get more. And it's a collaboration. The strategy is a collaboration between Baltimore City Public Schools, the Family League of Baltimore as a local management board, and the mayor's office, who is a larger local investor. So the board policy identifies the responsibilities, it kind of codifies what each role will be. Of course, city schools is helpful around professional development for principals and school staff, data sharing, and then resource alignment. The policy clearly defines the roles that our lead agencies, or we call them marriages between the principal and our local community-based organizations, and out-of-school time, our after-school partners. As a part of the policy, it requires the Community School Steering Committee, which is wonderfully co-chaired by Dr. Santelises and the CEO of the Family League, the great Damon Millard. It also creates a advisory board for practitioners. The community school lead agencies, the out-of-school time partners, and also community members are represented. This is just a visual of what is created through the policy, the structure. Again, I mentioned the advisory board, but we have 3 subcommittees. The Implementation Effectiveness Committee, who looks at how well we're doing, the strategy is doing in the schools where it's located. Sustainability, which is looking at the long-term investment and resourcing of the community school strategy, and designation. So those schools who are not currently in the strategy but would like to get in, or have all of the elements of a community school, this committee is set to designate, kind of like your good housekeeping seal of approval. Not going to read that to you, but community schools are not a physical place, right? It's less of the spray and pray technique where we are taking a whole bunch of resources and throwing them at buildings, but it's instead a strategic and integrated approach to partnerships and making sure that we're not scratching where the schools don't have an itch, and that those resources that are being applied in the building are targeted. All right, so this year we have 49 community schools, but really 50. We've had another one added. I believe I have additional maps so you can see the geographical distribution of community schools. So for those of you who would like them, you can see that, and it also has the names of the community schools on the back. We have 49 after-school programs attached to those buildings. Not all of there's 6 of the community schools are high schools. Not all of them have out-of-school time programs. And community schools are seen as hubs. We have some funding from the Department of Social Services where we do family stability work. The community school coordinators that you've seen before you this evening access those resources to support families. They're connected to Judy centers. They do some housing coordination where necessary, and the health department is also in partnerships through providing health resources. The Family League's role is really around professional development and capacity building. Every other month, we bring community school coordinators to our office and do professional development. Last year, that professional development was aligned with the blueprint, and so community school coordinators took part in learning around leadership, restorative practice, and literacy. We have data collection and evaluation. In fact, we'll be meeting with BCPS staff this week around data collection. We braided funding for community schools, both public and private, where we can, and we do communications and policy work. I'm going to pause here because I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this week is Community School Coordinator Appreciation Week. And I could not be more proud of the people who have come before you or the 49 coordinators that are in this building on the front lines every day doing amazing work. So I just want to publicly acknowledge them and say, yay, community school coordinators. All right. So I mentioned that there's 49 community schools. That represents 17 lead agencies. Clearly, some of our lead agencies have multiple schools. These lead agencies go to bed at night thinking about their students in the community and wake up in the morning, as do the 21 out-of-school time providers who are in those buildings. So some of the resources, this is actually...
Kalila, just
Yes,
pause
sir.
for 1 second. We have a question from Commissioner Frank.
Yeah, hi, the term school lead agency, is that like Child First and Strong City? Is that what lead
That
agencies
is,
are?
those are two examples, yes.
Okay, and there are 17, not now, obviously. Could you provide us a list of the 17 lead agencies?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Absolutely. You'll find that there are both large institutions and smaller ones like Koinonia Baptist Church. So they span. So what you see here is the city of Baltimore. This is actually the amount granted, but the mayor's investment in this is about $6.4 million. The Governor's Office of Children, these are last year's numbers, came in at about $1.3 million. And then the Baltimore City Public Schools, about $1.5 million. A part of that is $210,000 from the Office of Engagement.
And Kalila, the other, is most of that money from the individual school budgets?
Correct. So principals actually do a matching amount. So the grant award for community school coordinator is matched by principals, and sometimes the community organizations actually bring their own match. So there's
Okay.
actually no money out of the
Okay, that's
school
what I thought.
budget.
I thought that. I just want to make sure that that's how that money was being allocated.
Is there an easy answer to the question of what is the average cost for a community coordinator, community school coordinator?
I can tell you that our grant award, which has not grown and is not sufficient for the level of professional that we would like to see in school buildings, is $55,000 with a $20,000 required match. So that's up to $75,000. And there is a scale to where, depending on what organization you're employed by, individual salaries.
Thanks.
That doesn't represent the full cost of the strategy. I do want to mention that these numbers are not reflective of the leveraged dollars. Our community partners come through with leveraged amount. They seek funding on their own. They secure funding, some of them great and some of them small in amount, but there are monies that are coming and supporting children and family in schools that would otherwise may not have been acquired. In FY17, nearly $29 million was leveraged by these organizations. They report that annually to us, and we report that back to the city.
Is there a, so $6.4 million is coming from the mayor's office, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there a way that we can see how much how much specific resources are taken from that pot from the mayor's $6.4 million to see how much each resource is getting from that pot?
Sure, we can provide,
Okay.
in complete transparency, a disaggregated budget. Let me remember to mark that down. All right, so here's where we are. All members were seated in March 2017. Since then, the steering committee has met 4. We unfortunately canceled 2 meetings due to a staff transition and some schedule conflict. Community school steering committee members are actively engaged in quarterly meetings. We just met last Thursday. And the Implementation Effectiveness Subcommittee produced a self-assessment rubric so that schools that are engaged, schools and partners engaged in the strategy can do a self-assessment to see their effectiveness. We have bylaws that are in place now. We've identified we had a transition in our parent representative. We have identified a new parent representative. And just a special note, in May of earlier this year, Baltimore City Public Schools were featured as a part of the Coalition of Community Schools National Forum. So we had over 2,000 individuals from all over the U.S. and a couple of international visitors who came out and actually got to see Baltimore City Public Schools.
On that slide, yeah. So the self-assessment, is that since we've expanded now to 49, and that's obviously only a subset of all of our schools, but it's still a decent number to sort of say we have a real critical mass where we can, we really probably need to make sure that there's some, how do you say, quality control, you know? And is that the only evaluation of community schools is through a self-assessment? Because I'm thinking we might want something a little bit more rigorous.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I should say that in the past, we've had Burke do some studies. We did not have a contract with Burke due to some funding concerns on our part. But that is just the start. The Community School Steering Committee is taking this on. I should say that it is a self-assessment. It is not outcomes-based. And so we're not looking at impact with that. We're looking at the quality of the partnership. We're looking at how well schools are implementing the spirit of this strategy.
Who's responsible for the impact assessment?
We're getting there.
Okay.
And so there was a motion on the floor at the recent Community School Steering Committee for a work group to take this on along with another community partner.
So from my years of both community work, foundation work, whatever work, there's some things that are qualitative, and some of the things you just referenced in the self-assessment that feel really important and don't lend themselves, I don't think, to a quantitative, fully rigorous evaluation. I mean, I think these are, we sort of intuitively know that we need to help to coordinate these services for kids. But I think as both you, as the Family League, the mayor, the governor, Kerwin, us, as we start to look at ramping up a strategy, I think then when you say, well, what do we know about effectiveness of any given, of the model? Are there what have we learned from, we had, I think three people spoke to us from different parts of the city. It would be really interesting to know, well, what do we know about what works best? Is there a particular model? Are they so unique to every school in every part of the city that breaks down? Okay, are there some common elements? I do think as we reach a certain point and we're looking to scale up, especially now when we're talking about the possibility of some real money being infused into this, it just seems like it's the time to have something a little more rigor. I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to us. Like, I think we're all in this because we're going to have to really stare at this and say, what makes sense? Where should the money go? What should it be used for? What are the criteria? What are the gotta haves, not wanna haves? That's probably not scientific enough, but you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
That absolutely makes sense. It's somewhere we're there.
Okay.
I think we have some Berg studies that suggest things around attendance, right? The impact of attendance. We have some Berg studies that would talk about what are the fidelity markers around a good community school. But in terms of rigor, we need to get there. But there has been challenges that we are overcoming right now with regard to access to data and access to data for coordinators. And so we are overcoming those challenges, but it's going to take sustained effort and really a collective interest for all of us. I will say that Teresa Jones has been a really worthy partner. And as we talk about what are the research questions that we have, what can we do with little to no resources, and then what do we need to do to set a research agenda for community schools moving forward.
Okay.
So there has been movement. It's been slow. I wanted to accelerate as well. I think that is an interest of ourselves and our partners, but we have to overcome the burden.
Yeah, it's a critical moment. If we're looking for
data.
somebody at the state to ramp up their investment, they're definitely going to ask. So I think now's the time, because if we're going to really ramp this up, now's the time. Because we're not going to get, we can't, we get, I don't mean like us, I mean like the royal we know why we need this in Baltimore City. But when we're looking for additional investment from the state, it feels like it's ramping up at a time we need to get the data together. Commissioner Richardson has a question?
I heard some data earlier, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but the young lady's still sitting here. She said for every $1, there's $11 of social capital or something. That seems like a reporter study to me. Like, where's that information?
Oh, there are several reports that would attest to the impact of community schools on a national scale, absolutely. And then we have some local with the Burke reports. I'm happy to share those. But I think what my colleague Elise was referring to is communities in schools, kind of their national assessment of the return on investment. So for every $1 invested in community schools, there's an $11 return. Am I correct?
For the fourth bullet point, you guys are still looking for student members. What would that
Absolutely.
What would they do? What would they be doing? What would their roles be?
What is the requirement? So one thing that we are very clear about is student voice. We don't want adults around the table making decisions for kids. We want to make decisions with young people. I think that if we end up with the same adults around the tables, we'll get the same things we've always done. So youth voice is very critical, and youth agency is very important to us. And so we want an active youth member who attends the meetings and may partner in some of the subcommittee work as your schedule would allow. But the meetings are scheduled for 4 times a year, so they're quarterly. And then if you did any work group or action team work, that would be ad hoc, so as needed.
How many are you suggesting that you would be willing
So currently we have one student who is not actually a student at a community school, but I think both voices are important. And so we'd like to have another student and an alternate, so that at every meeting there's a student present.
Commissioner Frank?
Is this, I'm trying to just.
When you say that we understand the importance of doing rigorous analysis so that we can use that information when we need it for the state of current funding, whatever, who is the we? Who owns the responsibility? When you say we, in terms of agree that we should be producing some kind of rigorous assessment, working with Burke or some other entity, who is the we in this chart? And who owns the responsibility of taking the chair's comments, which I think are so appropriate, given where we are with Kerwin and everything else, to almost accelerate this as a priority, whether it's the Family League, is it us, is it the chairs of the steering committee? Who is it? And who responds to say we agree or don't agree, and if we agree, here's sort of the timeline, and here are the resources we need to get it done.
So when I say we, surely the Family League is what can be considered as a coordinating or facilitating partner. And so as the funder, we have a relationship with our partners, right? Some of which were here tonight. So that's our realm of influence. We come to this as partners with the school district, and because the mayor is the funder, we answer to the mayor as well and also bring her concerns to bear. We work with the Family and Community Engagement Office. Dr. S. co-chairs. But when I talk about we, I cannot direct the staff of the school board. So in terms of accountability, I can come in partnership, but I do not hold your team accountable.
I think we share the responsibility and the burden and answering the question. I just would encourage us all to ask the question and to answer who sort of owns this responsibility, not alone, but with support of all the partners in identifying a scope, identifying a partner, attracting and identifying resources, and then getting it done within a time frame that the collective we think is important. I don't know what that time frame is, but I feel like it's sooner rather than later. It's not a year and a half from now. It's much sooner than that, and in order to get that up and running, some of these just basic questions of who is responsible for pulling this together should be answered.
And if I could, Commissioner Frank, I think that point is particularly poignant when we talk about issues of accountability for effectiveness. It's not just the school department that is responsible for effectiveness. Part of the power for me of community schools is that it's jointly owned. It's not like one partner deals with all the accountability questions. It's we all deal with accountability questions, and it is looking at all of the factors around what makes an effective community school. So it is what are the school behaviors and school leadership behaviors that make an effective community school, but it is also what are the behaviors of partners and which partners are more effective or not. It is not just about putting all partners in one pot and saying they're all the same, in the same way that we hear quite frequently that not all schools are the same. And so the joint mutual accountability, I think you've raised a really important point. And I think it's important for the public to know that, because if the school system is the only one that's viewed as being responsible for quality, for making sure that all partners are involved, then it becomes a school system pushdown, as opposed to what, at least my understanding of the board's charge around community schools, was that it was an effort to make sure that this was a community partnership. So I think that's a really important point to make public, because I think oftentimes it's confusing in terms of who actually owns the success and, frankly, accountability of all partners involved in community schools.
Go ahead. My question, and I appreciate that, because I am admitted not fully aware of how the community schools have functioned and how they performed, except that I'm close to two schools with community school coordinators, and they're fantastic. Everybody loves them, and we know that if they were gone, the schools would suffer greatly. I'm just really, it's a very narrow question of how can we get if we think having a study, as the chair raised, is important for strategic reasons, how do we get it done? That's all, is my question.
And mine was similar. What's next, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, if I were in charge of that, which I'm not, what would I'm sort of wondering, how do the kids, if I was looking at, well, what would I look for if it was to know if it was working? I'd want to know what the parents think and what the kids think. I want to know what the principal thinks. I want to know what the lead agency thinks. I just went back to, I typed what you said, community school strategies and equity strategy, those who need more get more. I think part of the story that's a beautiful part of the story that would also, it's not like an evaluation thing, but what are people getting? Like kind of a roll up of how much are we've dollarized it, but I think just seeing as a result of this strategy, what are our kids and our schools getting that they wouldn't get otherwise? I think you do evaluation for a number of reasons. One, to find out what's working, what's not. You want more of what's working, you want less of what's not. And now that's why I think now's the timing. But I think it's also, the results of an evaluation can also sort of communicate volumes about how much impact and leverage this strategy is. I think national studies about how it translates, $1 turns into X dollars. I don't think in Baltimore, those are helpful, but I think in Baltimore now, I don't think there's a debate, like, do we need them or not? Like, case has been made, we got them, they're staying, we want more. So now I think we have the luxury now of fine tuning, not of making the case. The case making's been made, and we're not turning back. Now we have to say, if I'm going to go from 50 to 60, tell me what I need to know to decide what those next 10 should be. I want to look at my equity map. I want to see where the first 50 are, and I saw that I got an email today with your map. I want to know, what's Chris Ryer doing that makes me want to do more? What's Ahmad doing that it makes me want to do more or less? I mean, so we just have to dig deep into what we've got. We don't have to make the case anymore. The case is made. Got it. So that's my. I don't know what the next step is, but I'm thinking it sounds like a pretty good steering committee task to me, because they would have to be seriously on board. And if you all get together and say, we're going to do this, and you form a subcommittee, and the subcommittee says, all right, here's the 14 questions we're trying to answer. We think we can hire such and such a consultant for $40,000. Where are we going to get the $40,000? You start asking people. I mean, I think that's what I would do. Like, just decide to do it and take it by the throat and do it.
So thank you for that. That's both affirming and encouraging in terms of taking our next steps. There was an action item that came out of the Community School Steering Committee that is getting to that outcomes question. And so that we'll be pursuing it. So I'm hoping that not even next year, before then, we'll have some update, Commissioner Frank, on the progress of that work and that research. Am I going backwards or forwards? Okay, so the road ahead, just as you suggested, more collaborative action is needed to really implement the policy that you all have set forth with Fidelity. There are efforts underway. The school district is being responsive to MSDE. The mayor wants to be more engaged in her investment, and Family League has to come to the table around procurement and how we go about either increasing the number of schools and how we do that. We need to figure those things out. And so we need more collaborative action, and resources are needed. So every year we are concerned at the Family League about the budget, the mayoral budget, the availability of funds to continue to award. We feel like that we can move forward with some confidence around those funds right now, but we need Kerwin to come through, right, in terms of funding as we look at how do we scale community schools locally. But we also have to think about how do we staff it appropriately as well. So it's not just a function of funding, but it's a function of having the appropriate infrastructure to support. And so those are the questions that we have to consider around outcomes, around support, financial support for the strategy, and around the infrastructure that is the human resource that is needed to move forward. I think that's it. Is your slide on there? Oh, there we go.
So we and conduct professional development and training to city school leaders and school-based staff, serve as a liaison and collaborative partner with Family League agencies and other external stakeholders. And they will also lead a district interdisciplinary committee focused on the successful implementation of city schools. And so actually that position is posted. And we've been sending that out to folk, and hopefully we need some resumes so that we can start interviewing, but we're really excited about this opportunity to have this staff person in our office.
Fadden had a question?
What is are schools pursued or recruited to apply for the grants? Do we actively seek schools out that we may consider could potentially benefit from being in the community schools program? Or
That's a great question, Commissioner. So the funding for community schools has not grown in some time. As such, the portfolio of schools has not grown or is limited in growth. So we have schools who are interested in being in the strategy or being funded, receiving funding. Unfortunately, the availability of funds is just not there. So I guess that's the answer.
how many of the community schools are traditional middle schools? Because I think we have like 3 traditional middle schools right now, I think.
I would have to look.
It's out of my personal curiosity. I'm curious to know how many.
Our traditional middle schools. I'd have to research that.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Lynn?
On slide, sorry, gotta find it. It's been a rough day. It doesn't matter. So on the slide where it says it's funding, 4 community schools are self-funded through either self-funded or funded through another way besides the mayoral and GOC dollars. Are they striving at the same rate as the people that are getting funded from the mayoral and GOC dollars through like evaluations that we've had? Like, are they striving at the same rate? And if not, is it funding perhaps that's happening, or is there another reason for it?
That is another great question. So we have instances where community-based organizations have sought funding, maybe through MSDE or federal funding, to work with a school partner who maybe is interested in being a community school but have not the funds. We do allow for those coordinators to attend our professional development, but we don't require them to submit the same data that we require of our funded partners.
And if a school finds outside funding and they would like to apply to be a community school, considering that you said that funding is the primary issue for the portfolio not rising, if we find outside funding, would they be able to still become community schools?
Yes, we do have instances where the district is using title dollars to support this as an evidence-based strategy.
I think probably both of you received the list of questions from Joe that Commissioner Hassan submitted, and which are terrific. And as is usually the case when the staff and Kalila are able to respond, if you could share that with all commissioners. I'm not going to read the questions here because they were submitted, late last night. But some of them have been answered through this presentation. Some of the other ones will be illuminating. But I think there's some consensus that we're all in, but we need, as we scale up, we need to really double down on getting some good data. Thank you very much for the time, and thanks for all the community school participation in tonight's meeting.
Thank you.
I'm just going to run through a list of upcoming meetings. As we heard earlier, PCAB meets here Thursday at 6:30. Teaching and Learning on Tuesday, October 2nd, in this room at 3:30. The next time we'll all be together is, we'll be upstairs for executive session. It says on here 3, but it'll be 2 on October 9th. And the public board meeting will be here on October 9th at 5. Operations on October 16th at 10. And Policy Committee on October 16th at 3:30. Anything else for the good of the whole? We are officially, no, I can't do that. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Commissioner Richardson, second? Commissioner Berkeley. All in favor? Commissioner Lynn, you want to stay? Okay. Commissioners Lynn, McFadden, Chinia, Kashani, Frank, Berkeley, Richardson. Motion passes 7-0. Meeting is officially adjourned.